Genshin players coming together and beating the illiteracy allegations was not on my 2025 bingo card. I haven't seen the community so united in a very long time. Not just on the EN side of things, but internationally. Even our Chinese bros are invested in this issue right now. This video turned out to be quite long, so before we get into it, let me give you a quick breakdown of what I'm about to cover. There will be timestamps below so you can skip to the parts that interest you the most. I'll start off by giving you some context as to what led to this situation in the first place. Then we'll talk about the SAG-AFTRA strike, the SAG's rules when it comes to union VAs. Then we'll cover the Taft-Hartley's, SAG's opinion on non-union VAs, go over the Interim Agreement, talk about SAG's AI protections and their deals with AI studios. We'll move on to the NAVA AI rider, Chinese labor union laws and laws against AI. We'll mention what some non-union VAs think about this situation, and lastly conclude with how all of this managed to reach the Chinese fans as well. You're gonna be in for quite the ride, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Also, final disclaimer, before we start, don't bother other VAs to speak about this, as most of them have chosen to remain professional and not speak on the matter. Don't drag other VAs into this that have nothing to do with the situation either, and lastly, don't attack and harass any of the sides involved. If you haven't been following the news on Twitter, Reddit, even YouTube, maybe TikTok, I don't know, for the past few days, you may be wondering what the hell am I even talking about? So here's some context. On March 26th, Genshin Impact's version 5.5 dropped. It was stated in the patch notes that Kinich's English VA has been recast. Jacob Takanashi, who is the new VA for Kinich, posted an announcement on Twitter saying that he's honored to join the English cast of Genshin, while at the same time being respectful towards the previous VA John Patenaude and acknowledging their work, saying they're grateful for the opportunity to carry the flame from the previous flamebearer John, who did an incredible job, and that those are big shoes to fill. And this is where everything started going downhill. This news did not fly well with some of the English cast. John made a statement that he had been recast, saying it had been his dream to voice in a project like Genshin, and he didn't expect things to turn out this way. He had been willingly withholding voiceover services during the SAG-AFTRA strike, despite not being part of the union. He was simply striking in solidarity with the rest of the union VAs, which is probably why he ended up being recast. While his response was very reasonable, and I do sympathize with him, it must be absolutely terrible to lose your job like this, especially after working so hard to achieve your dreams. I do really feel bad for John, but some of the English VAs had responses that were interesting. Some of them had a literal public meltdown. They were not happy with the news about the recast. And to be fair, it is truly sad that it has come to this, but what is bullying the new guy gonna do? They were blaming him for taking the role from John and were quick to assume that Jacob knew about the strike and that what he's doing is wrong. But they will later find out that they were, in fact, in the wrong. Karina Bodker, Paimon's VA, was essentially calling him a scab, saying that Jacob is no castmate of hers. Then later completely crashed out once people called her out for working on Genshin while the strike is happening, and she victimized herself by saying that she too is a scab and that they should be attacking her and harassing her too, but that she's disabled and is just trying to put food on the table. I mean, we're all trying to put food on the table, so there's that, yeah. Kuching's VA, Kylie Mills, directly replied to him saying that this is diabolical, that he should have taken this role uncredited at least, and basically calling him a cloud chaser. Hutao's VA was caught throwing some shade, saying that some of them are still holding the lines, quote retweeting John, and Candace's VA had a complete meltdown on Blue Sky, saying that he's never gonna work on anything else and that she's basically done with Genshin. It's honestly probably gonna take me like an hour to talk about all of the people that attacked and harassed him, other Genshin English VAs, other VAs that are not working on Genshin, and other industry professionals, even though the way they're reacted and their actions haven't been very professional, but anyways, that's not the point of the video today. I did talk more about the situation as it was unfolding in my two previous videos. I was going over everything on my stream, so the videos are maybe a little bit all over the place, but if you want, feel free to check them out. The only person that had a positive attitude throughout this whole time was Nathan Noakes, who is Ororon's VA. He was the only one to welcome Jacob into the cast and to even reach out to him. Jacob lives and works in Japan, and it was thanks to Nathan that we found out that he didn't even know about the strike or SAG, since SAG isn't in Japan. Who would have thought that someone based in Japan wouldn't know about US problems? Wild, right? Feminist VA was also very based to make this post, saying, "When in doubt, treat others how you want to be treated." It appears the post is now deleted, but he said what he said, and that was very nice of him. A lot of people called out and criticized those VAs for doing what they did to Jacob. Some people, however, went too far and started sending them death threats and other nasty messages. Attacking and harassing anyone is never the solution. It doesn't help the situation in any way. And it's important to hold people accountable for their wrongdoings, but sending death threats is too far. Just don't do it, man. Jacob even went out of his way to defend his bullies, but instead of apologizing to him, they doubled down and tried to paint themselves as the victims, demanding that he comes forward and tells people that he was not being bullied. I'm sorry, but what in the high school bully BS is this? This is getting absolutely ridiculous. They've been calling out the community about spreading misinformation, yet they have been sharing articles stating that John Paternotte has been voicing Kinich for 5 years, when Nathan only came out 7 months ago, and Kinich was voiced just for 5.0 and he remained unvoiced ever since. The game only recently had its 5-year anniversary. It is clear that whoever wrote this article didn't do any research, they just saw some drama on Twitter and went with it. But sure, we are the ones spreading misinformation. But anyways, I'll say it again, don't freaking harass any of the parties involved, okay? It's really not needed, it doesn't help anyone. We all got to see everyone's true colors, and I feel like that's the most important part of things. And honestly speaking, if it wasn't for all of these VAs crashing out and acting completely immature and unprofessional, who knows when we would have actually started digging deeper into the issue and uncovering that not everything is black and white. And that this all may essentially be SAG-AFTRA's fault. Allegedly, hypothetically. In Minecraft, in a dream, in Skyrim, okay? Now before we start, I do have to say that I am not a voice actor, I'm not a part of the industry, I'm also not a legal expert. I try to find my information from credible sources. The last thing I wish to do is spread any misinformation. My goal is simply to help spread more clarity on the situation so that we can all try to understand the full picture better. If any of the information I'm about to present in this video is wrong, do correct me and I'll update everything in the pinned comment down below. Now with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get started. As you may already know, a lot of the Genshin characters haven't been voiced in English for months. That's because the voice actors are on strike, or rather the union voice actors are on strike. But what even is the union and what does that have to do with Genshin? SAG-AFTRA is an American labor union for actors, voice actors, and other media professionals, and they have been on strike since July 26, 2024, demanding better AI protections. Reasonable, right? There's gonna be more to that in a second. Now this part here is important, so pay attention. According to SAG-AFTRA's Global Rule 1, their #1 rule, okay? It states that SAG-AFTRA members must always work under a union contract around the globe. It states that no member shall render any services or make an agreement to perform services for any employer who has not executed a basic minimum agreement with the union, which is in full force and effect in any jurisdiction in which there is a SAG-AFTRA National Collective Bargaining Agreement in place. This provision applies worldwide. And it further goes to say that SAG-AFTRA takes Global Rule 1 very seriously. Violating it can result in disciplinary action ranging from reprimands to fines to expulsion. It is each member's responsibility to ensure that a producer is SAG-AFTRA signatory and to get a SAG-AFTRA contract whenever he or she works, even when working outside of the United States. They also say that SAG-AFTRA is increasing enforcement of Global Rule 1, which states that members must only work under union contracts. If you're caught working non-union, you'll face a jury of your peers and could be fined, suspended, or expelled from the union. So it's a very serious thing, right? They do state that non-union work undercuts the union's ability to negotiate the best contracts possible for you, and working off the card not only contributes to the growth of non-union work, but it puts your membership in jeopardy. So Genshin Impact as well as all Hoyo games are non-union projects, yet union voice actors are working on them. How did that even happen? Well, some SAG-AFTRA VAs admitted that SAG has been turning a blind eye to everyone breaking that rule. Kyle McCarley wrote a thread on Reddit where he stated that when an actor joins SAG-AFTRA, they agree to adhere to its rules, one of which is Global Rule 1. The rule states that members cannot perform any covered work, we already talked about that. In other words, members are not supposed to work non-union acting jobs. And if someone finds out that they are violating that rule, they can be punished. And he further goes to explain that SAG-AFTRA can only enforce rules if the staff paid to do so are informed of violations. So if no one informs them of violations, they don't do anything. He continues, I think it went overlooked for so long because the internet caused legacy SAG pre-AFTRA merger to fall woefully behind in keeping up with technology, leading to more and more non-union jobs and less union ones, which meant a growing non-union voiceover community and a shrinking union one. Over time, those non-union actors gain union membership, and eventually the union's full of voiceover members working off the card, and none of them are reporting the violations to staff to reprimand each other for it. The Interactive Committee was very forthright with us in the lead up to this strike, letting us know that Global Rule 1 violations would not be overlooked if a strike became necessary because of how existential it was. It's rough and it's a lose-lose situation. It should have been enforced all along, but because it wasn't, we were faced with the choice between undermining the strike by allowing it to continue or changing what's now a decades-long common practice. He does state that he does not speak on behalf of the union and no member does. He's not a part of the Interactive Committee, which gives him more freedom to speak candidly. Otherwise, he'd have to check a lot of touchy subjects with the communications department and likely wouldn't be able to say things like Global Rule 1 has been overlooked for decades. So there it is. As I'm literally mid-editing this video, we have Kylie Mills, Kaching's VA over here, also admit the fact that union VAs should not be working on non-union projects. Here's what she says. Technically, no union actor should work non-union at all, but we do, all the time. It's always been that way in voiceover. It's not necessarily fine, but it is still very different from taking an existing role from someone who vacated that role withholding work for AI protections. Once again throwing shade at Jacob. It's been over a week. I think you can stop now. That's why you don't see anyone calling out any of the actors announcing their non-union roles. It's because while as much solidarity as possible helps the cause, no one really expects everyone to be perfect allies. And she continues with, I should clarify, a lot of union voiceover actors work non-union. Not all. There are some people that follow the rules perfectly. I don't know nearly as many of them. So yeah, she admitted that they've basically been breaking the rules. And also another fun fact, in a reply to someone else, she also admitted that while the game is non-union, many of them have been making the union rates.
God forbid, I want my industry to actually, I don't know, function, and that everybody gets paid and everybody gets, healthcare.
We'll talk about healthcare a little bit later.
Did you know that, once things become union, people get paid a lot more? So people are like, oh, but, then some non-union actors will have to join the union. Yeah, they'll be able to.
So yeah, I guess some of them have been making union rates. So once again, some people have been misleading the community about this whole situation as well. And also, in a now deleted tweet, apparently, good thing I screenshotted that, she was assuming Jacob's entire life situation. Defending Karina that this is her bread and butter and this is not Jacob's full-time work. How do you know? She's saying that this is one small job for him and that he's done very little voiceover work, so it isn't what he's relying on to pay the bills. For all we know, his wife's the breadwinner. How disgusting is it to assume someone's life situation like that? So yeah, I promised I wasn't gonna talk about these VAs more, but I saw that she deleted the post and yeah. What's interesting though is that they don't allow union members to work non-union jobs normally, even though no one is enforcing their rules. So that does happen quite a lot. On the official SAG-AFTRA website, they are debunking union myths, and one of them being, as a union member, I'm not allowed to audition for non-union work. Wrong! Okay, you are allowed to audition for non-union work, however, you cannot work without a union contract. Audition, get the part, you're likely to stand out in a non-union crowd. I find this funny because we'll get to what SAG-AFTRA thinks about non-union actors a little bit later in the video, and you see why I chuckled at this. Once you're offered the role, explain that you can't do the role unless it's union. Let the producer know that going union is not nearly as complicated or expensive as they might imagine. Staff is right here in Texas to help with the paperwork. So basically, you are encouraged to audition for non-union work. And when you get the job, when you land the role, you're supposed to then try and convince the company you're working with to become union. I'm not sure how that's gonna work out for them, but okay, so they are actively trying to convert non-union projects into union ones. Understandably so, they want more work for their union talents. That would leave non-union talents with less work. But okay. If the union is on strike and Genshin is a non-union project, then what is the problem? On the official SAG-AFTRA's website, you can find the following. Can I work on games that are not covered by the video game contract? They do state that under Global Rule 1, they can provide services. They would need a company to sign the Interim Interactive Localization Agreement. This is in Genshin's case. This means that you cannot work on union games. Global Rule 1 states no member shall render any services or make an agreement to perform services for any employer who has not executed a basic minimum agreement with the union, which is in full force and effect in any jurisdiction. So basically, that's why they can't work during the strike, because they don't have a union contract with the game, even though the game was never a union project, yet they worked on it. So essentially, they allowed union VAs to work on a non-union project and not enforce their Global Rule 1, and are now forcing those same VAs to not continue work on said non-union projects until those projects sign the Interim Interactive Localization Agreement and essentially become union. So what we can take from all of this is that SAG's lack of rule enforcement has led to the situation we're in today, hypothetically speaking in Red Dead Redemption 2. Okay, so Hoyo just needs to sign that agreement and then everyone can get back to work, right? Well, yes and no. It's not nearly as simple as some people have made it out to be, including SAG-AFTRA. Following the Kinich recast drama, they took to Twitter to tag the official pages for Genshin, ZZZ, and HSR, quote retweeting Daris Kinonen's tweet. I assume they are private now, but basically she said, "Hey, we would love to get back to work. I know the fans miss hearing their favorite characters and we miss voicing them. Please negotiate with SAG-AFTRA and sign the interim agreement." And SAG-AFTRA quote retweeted that and said, "Hey, what she said, we'll make it easy for you. Here's a link to our interactive video game media agreements. Let's talk soon, winky face." Now, I don't know if this is how you do business in the States, but it sure as hell isn't how you do it in China. It honestly looks pathetic. Going like, "Hey, senpai, please notice me." Oh, well, like, come on. You're supposed to be industry professionals. And let's not mention the fact that they didn't address the bullying situation. It's almost like they supported their actors in bullying others, non-union actors. But sure. And it turns out that this was not the first time they've tried to get the attention of Genshin. They made a similar post back in 2023 around the time of the Formosa issue, which is one of the studios Genshin was working with at the time, and it was delaying payments to the voice actors. That was purely the studio's fault and not Hoyoverse's. And Hoyoverse even came out with a statement saying, "We truly regret to learn about the ongoing situation. Genshin Impact values and respects the work and effort of everyone involved, and we support our voice actors to claim their proper due. We have made payments to our recording studio on time, and we have immediately urged the studio to pay our voice actors. Meanwhile, we are also seeking alternative solutions. We will keep everyone posted on future developments." And they have since stopped working with Formosa, I believe, after they caused multiple issues like that, and they have now partnered with Side Global, which is a recording studio based in London, Tokyo, and LA. And it is also the studio that Jacob recorded with. So it does seem like SAG-AFTRA is trying to ride on every opportunity, every uproar from the community and desperately get Genshin or Hoyoverse's attention, but it's not working out that well. Now back to that agreement that SAG-AFTRA wants Hoyo to sign. SAG-AFTRA claims that they just want AI protections for their talents, and I'm pretty sure everyone is fine with that, which is why so many people have been supporting the strike. But it turns out there may be more to that, and certain details are very conveniently being left out. So what would happen if Hoyo signs the agreement? That would mean that their games would become union projects. It's not that the company goes union, but it's that a project becomes union, so they can decide that Genshin becomes a union project but ZZZ remains non-union, basically. And in the world of VAs, union VAs should theoretically only be able to work on union projects, as we established. But that's clearly not the case, as SAG hasn't been enforcing its own rules. Non-union VAs, or well, VAs who are not members of SAG-AFTRA, can only work on non-union projects. They could work on a union project, thanks to the Taft-Hartley Act. There are currently many non-union VAs voicing characters in Genshin and other games, so if Hoyo signs the agreement, it would mean that they would have to go through the Taft-Hartley Act procedure in order to keep working on the game. And you may have seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's just a one-page document and that's all Hoyo has to do. They just have to fill that out and it's gonna be okay." So let's look at the Taft-Hartley Act. What is a SAG-AFTRA Taft-Hartley report? The form gathers essential employment and production information. It also includes a critical reason for hire. Pay attention to this section, where producers must explain why a non-union performer was selected over a union actor. This report ensures compliance with union regulations and helps maintain transparency in casting decisions. Not only do they have to include a good reason for hiring the non-union talent, but what many fail to mention is that processing a Taft-Hartley, this is from the official SAG website, takes at least 6 to 8 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks, that's almost 2 months, okay? At least. So even if you submit all the necessary paperwork, SAG is the one that makes the final decision. If they do approve the Taft-Hartley, then the VA has a 30-day window in which they can work on the project. And you can see how that would be a problem for a long-term project like Genshin Impact. Having to wait for 2 months to work with their VAs for only 30 days is wild. When you have characters that may make an appearance in the story in 5.5 and then appear again in an event in 6.2, which would be many months later. And now, according to a lot of the VAs, Hoyo could negotiate individual agreements for everyone so they don't have to abide by that 30-day rule, but that is still no guarantee that SAG would agree, right? Furthermore, a VA can only ever submit 3 Taft-Hartleys in their life before being forced to join the union, as mentioned by other VAs like Koidao over here. If they decide not to join, they can only ever work on non-union projects. And if they do join, they have to pay a hefty price of $3,000 for a membership fee, plus a percent of their annual revenue. They do offer payment plans apparently and also offer loans, but it's still a large amount of money. Some of the VAs have been saying that SAG-AFTRA is not a corporation, but a non-profit organization. And yes, sure, the union needs funds to operate. I agree with that. They need the funds for legal resources, and apparently they also offer health insurance plans. What I find funny though, I mean, it's not funny, it's actually pretty sad, is that according to data from SAG-AFTRA, this is from 2023, more than 80%, of the guild's 160,000 members earn less than $26,000, the minimum required for health insurance eligibility from acting each year. And now some people have been saying, oh, by the projects going union, that means we're gonna get paid more and we can get health insurance.
God forbid. I want my industry to actually, function, and that everybody gets paid and everybody gets, healthcare.
But is that really the case? I mean, I honestly find it concerning that only 1/5 of the union has access to said health insurance, whereas the majority of them are fricked. Meanwhile, while 80% of the members can't afford health insurance, their National Executive Director and Chief Negotiator, Duncan Crabtree Ireland, was the highest paid among the Hollywood union leaders and the 9th highest paid labor official in the US in 2023. He made almost $1 million that year. The reason why I'm even mentioning him is that in a now deleted tweet from August 15th, 2024, the tweet stated, curious about how SAG-AFTRA is protecting voice performance in the evolving digital landscape, tune in to the latest podcast. Okay, and Mr. Duncan Crabtree Ireland over here said the following. And so to have the ability to have these protections in place, but to also, if a member wants to, really be active in this space, and help make sure this space is not dominated by, non-union performances, frankly, probably of lesser quality, but nonetheless, that would be a loss of opportunities for our members. Lesser quality, he said, allegedly, in FIFA 2025. He's the chief negotiator, right? He led the 2023 TV and theatrical contract negotiations in strike. He's the one doing the negotiating. He's negotiating all the contracts, and that's what he has to say about non-union talent? Now, he did get a lot of backlash by a lot of voice actors, as you can see in the tweets here, which is why they ended up deleting the tweet and the video, the podcast. Yeah. And everyone is saying how every voice actor who wants to advance their career does ultimately want to join the union, but I think what they mean to say is that this is the only way for someone to have a career, allegedly speaking, hypothetically, in Monster Hunter worlds. So, back to that tweet where SAG-AFTRA was tagging Genshin and the other games, they sent a link to their agreements, and people have been going through them and finding interesting things. I will once again say that I am not a lawyer, I'm not an expert in US law, so it would probably be best if a lawyer actually went through the agreement and gave us their opinion. Legal mindset, I'm looking at you. I'm kidding, unless. I'm kidding. Anyways, many have pointed out that Section 6 of Article 1 looks interesting, so let's take a look at that. It states the following: employer will only employ performers covered by this agreement who are members of SAG-AFTRA in good standing, or those who shall make application for membership on the 30th day following the beginning of employment, and thereafter maintain such membership in good standing as a condition of employment. So what does good standing mean? I was looking for an answer for this, and what I found out was that a member in good standing basically means being a paid up and active member. So you must have paid all of your membership fees, and you're an active member, because they do have a type of membership where if you haven't done work for a while, you can become inactive. And I assume you don't have to pay, or pay less, I'm not sure. But yes, so you must employ performers in good standing. And it gets interesting a bit later on. Now it does state here that nothing in this agreement will be construed as preventing employer from hiring non-SAG-AFTRA members in accordance with the Taft-Hartley Act to perform in interactive programs. And yes, the Taft-Hartley Act is not something specific for SAG-AFTRA, it is US law, so they cannot forbid you from hiring non-union members. But once again, the final decision lies with SAG-AFTRA, so even if you submit all those forms, they could theoretically, in Marvel Rivals, reject you. The following paragraph is interesting because it says, the employer shall pay to SAG-AFTRA as liquidated damages the sum of $500 for each breach by the employer of the provisions of this section. Any breach of this section is subject to arbitration. Each time the employer hires a performer in violation of this section, it shall be considered a separate breach irrespective of the number of days of employment. So if you happen to hire an actor who hasn't paid their membership fees, you're the one in trouble. And here's where it gets even more interesting. It is the employer's responsibility to ascertain if each performer is a member of SAG-AFTRA in good standing. They don't even tell you that, you have to find that out yourself. And then they say the employer shall provide SAG-AFTRA the names of performers to be used in the production of interactive material no later than the time of hiring or 48 hours in advance of the initial sessions, whichever is later. So yeah, they don't tell you, they don't even tell you which of the members are in good standing. You have to find that out for yourself, and if you happen to accidentally hire someone that is not an active member or that hasn't paid their fees, then you're the one that gets fined. From my understanding. I'm not a lawyer, hypothetically, in Minecraft. I also forgot to elaborate on this part here. Those who shall make application for membership on the 30th day following the beginning of employment. By that, I believe they are referring to non-union VAs who got to work on the projects thanks to the Taft-Hartley report. As some have stated, after your 30th day, you have to apply to join the union if you wish to continue working on the project. So that's where this whole issue comes from. And as some people have said, Hoyo could potentially negotiate with SAG about this 30-day rule, but who knows what SAG will have to say about this. And Section 7 is also a little bit interesting. It says that employer agrees that in the hiring of performers, preference will be given to qualified professional performers who are reasonably and readily available. For work required to be performed in person, preference will be given to qualified professional performers who are reasonably and readily available in the locality where the work is to be performed. And once again, they get fined for this breach, which, yeah, like how are they gonna say this person is not that qualified, so we're gonna fine you? I don't know. But by a qualified professional performer, later on it states that that means someone who had prior employment as a principal performer or background actor respectively at least once in the 3 years period preceding the date of proposed employment. This is just my interpretation, but if SAG deems the talent as not a qualified professional, not only do you have to pay damages, but the breach could lead to arbitration once again? I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. The interim agreement does cover AI protections. In Section 16, they basically need a company to acquire the performer's consent if they wish to use their voice for generative AI purposes. Creation of digital replica. The employer must notify the performer at the earlier of the audition or the job offer if it will create a digital replica of the performer or a blend of more than one performer and shall obtain the informed consent of the performer. And the same for use of digital replica, the employer must obtain the performer's informed consent. And they talk about compensation, how much they would have to pay them for reuse of material and digital replicas. And it's the same here in this part about generative AI. It says the following: if employer wishes to use generative AI system to generate material other than digital replicas created pursuant to section 1 above, in a manner that would replace work under this agreement that would otherwise be performed by a human, the employer agrees to give the union prior notice. If an employer intends to create generative AI-generated material by prompting a generative AI system using a performer's name or the name of a character uniquely associated with the performer, again, the producer shall obtain the performer's consent. So they only cover the fact that you need the performer's consent, and I guess that's one form of protection, but nowhere do they outright reject the use of AI and say that the company cannot use the performer's voice for generative AI purposes. But oddly enough, I didn't come across any text mentioning fines, damages, or others if you fail to obtain the person's consent and do make generated content using their voices. Maybe I happened to miss it, as it is a 65-page document and I am no lawyer, so take that with a grain of salt. If I did miss it, let me know in the comments and I'll add it in the pinned comment as usual. But yeah, as far as I could see by going through this, it's about 3 pages long, the whole AI section. All it said is that you need to obtain the informed consent of the performer. That was basically it. So, to summarize, essentially, if Hoyo signs the agreement and Genshin becomes a union project, some of the non-union VAs may potentially, hypothetically, be at risk of losing their roles, allegedly, in GTA 6. And going forward, Genshin would probably only want to cast only union talents, as that makes the whole procedure easier, and that's what SAG-AFTRA seems to want, allegedly. Now, I think the only way to get around this is by hiring non-US based talents, as then they are not required to join the union. So there's that. What I did find interesting though is that SAG-AFTRA has partnered with multiple AI studios that wish to use talents' voices to train their AI models with. One of them being Ethelvox. Here they have mentioned others like Replica, Narrative, and here it is stated, co-founded by BAFTA Games Award winner Sissy Jones. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering that. Ethelvox is building a fully authenticated foundational AI model for voice. In addition to ensuring performers can participate in Ethelvox's consensual foundational model, knowing that they will be protected and compensated fairly, the voice model will reflect a commitment to diversity and inclusion. Further, the SAG-AFTRA Ethelvox contract leads the field in performer compensation as it provides both session fees and ongoing revenue sharing for the life of the foundational model. The same guy, the National Executive Director and Chief Negotiator, here said, "What will safeguard voice actors' livelihoods in the AI age is more contractual protection, not less. That's why SAG-AFTRA will continue to recognize AI companies like Ethelvox that agree with our union's AI guidelines. Not everyone will want to work with an AI company, and that's understandable, but for those who intend to utilize the opportunities AI offers, it is important that agreements require companies to secure informed consent and provide fair compensation." So once again, here they only mention consent and compensation. They are not completely against the use of AI. And I mean, it is good that you need a consensual agreement, but it kinda does make it seem like SAG-AFTRA isn't too opposed to AI. The whole idea that they're essentially supporting AI companies feels like a slap in the face for all VAs out there. I don't know. We have to question if even allowing companies to use AI instead of real voice actors is ethical and beneficial to anyone. Even with the consent of the person, they can just keep using a handful of AI models trained on the voices of actors for years to come. Would that then not encourage more companies to use AI going forward? And would that not lead to less and less projects where authentic voices are needed? Would the lack of projects not push VAs to the edge and make them feel forced to sell their voices to companies just so they can survive? Does that not diminish this entire fight against AI? Just a few months ago, there was a case with a voice actor called Nick Meyer, who was offered $100,000 to sell his voice to a company. And while he turned down the offer, which led to his studio dropping him, others would have and probably already have taken the offer in his place. There are gonna be people out there that would throw away all morals and agree to terms like this, while others will continue to stand their ground. So by encouraging companies to use people's voices to feed into AI models, by having them sign disagreements with the VAs willing to do that, that would inevitably lead to a lot of companies going the AI route instead of hiring real talent. And with enough AI voices in their arsenal, It won't be long before they won't need a single voice actor ever again. The VAs have been saying how they're fighting for these protections to ensure that their jobs will still exist in 5 to 10 years. But is SAG-AFTRA not speeding up that process by allowing companies to use AI with the consent of the VAs instead of outright rejecting it and being against its use completely? Allegedly, hypothetically speaking, in Honkai Star Rail? I don't know. It is a complicated topic for sure, and these are just my thoughts on the matter as of right now. And now, the National Association of Voice Actors, or NAVA for short, has commissioned an AI writer for VAs to use when working with companies. And some VAs have said that this is a decent form of protection for non-union VAs, but that it doesn't compare to SAG's protection. I find it rather funny how in this one page, literally a one-page document, offers more protection than the SAG agreement, allegedly, hypothetically speaking, in Assassin's Creed Shadows. As it does state that the company is not allowed to use the voice of the actor for AI generative purposes. The client shall not utilize any recording or performance to simulate the talent's voice or likeness or create any synthesized or digital double voice or likeness of talent. They will not sell or transfer ownership. They will not enter any agreements or contracts on behalf of the talent which utilizes any part of the original file recordings that would be used to feed into artificial intelligence, such as text-to-speech and others. They are outright rejecting the use of AI. It doesn't say, oh, if you want to use AI, you just have to ask for their consent. The only benefit of SAG-AFTRA in this case is that if someone does breach the agreement, you have their legal team to take care of that and file a lawsuit on your behalf. Whereas if you're non-union, you're gonna have to do that yourself. But I just found it funny how this one page, at least in my eyes, once again, I'm not a lawyer, how this one page offers more protection than the entire agreement. Allegedly, hypothetically speaking, in League of Legends. And now when it comes to Hoyoverse and Chinese laws, because people have been mentioning that too, there are people saying that Hoyoverse can't even sign the agreement as they are a part of the All China Federation of Trade Unions. I'll come to that in a second. And signing with a foreign union would be against the Chinese labor law, allegedly. But it seems like some of the posts that have been shared online are written or translated with AI and don't really represent the actual legal articles that are being cited. So Article 18 of the Company Law of the People's Republic of China states that the employees of a company shall organize a labor union and conduct labor union activities in accordance with the labor union law of the People's Republic of China to protect the lawful rights and interests of the employees. And here in 2022, I believe it was, July 8, 2022, the first Labor Union Representative Conference and the first Staff Representative Conference of Shanghai MiHoYo Network Technology Co., Ltd. were successfully held. The conference selected the first committee of the MiHoYo Labor Union, with Yin Chunbo, the Deputy Secretary of the MiHoYo Party and Vice President of the company, being elected as the Chairman of the first committee of the MiHoYo Labor Union. So they formed the Labor Union in 2022, and all unions in China are required to register within the ACFTU, which is the largest union there, which is a state-run body. Labor unions have a central place in the Chinese Communist Party's proletariat beginnings, and workers' rights have grown in importance as China moves from a planned economy to a more market-oriented one. The country boasts the biggest union in the world, the All China Federation of Trade Unions, a state-run body. While I couldn't find an exact article in the law prohibiting Chinese companies from signing contracts and agreements with foreign unions, it isn't entirely impossible that this wouldn't be something the CCP wants, especially considering the tense relations between the US and China right now. And while Hoyoverse is based in Singapore and there may be some roundabout way of doing business with foreign unions, it is still technically owned by MiHoYo, the Chinese company. But this is a very complicated matter, and we'd really need someone that specializes in Chinese labor law and international relations to clarify this. So I just wanted to mention this since I've been seeing a lot of threads and comments talking about how Hoyo can't legally sign the agreement. And the reality is that we don't really have any official proof of that. So don't believe everything you see online, or take it with a couple spoonfuls of salt. Labor laws and unions aside, we do know that there are already strict laws in China against the use of AI without the person's consent. The New Civil Code protects the right to voice as an emerging portrait right. This means that it is prohibited for any individual or entity to alter, damage, or falsify someone's voice or to manipulate it using technology. The law prohibits the creation, utilization, or dissemination of someone's voice without their consent. And this whole thing happened after a court case in which a company had processed a voice actress's voice with AI technology without her consent and used it in audiobooks. And the court decided that the defendants, the cultural media company and the software company, are jointly responsible for compensating the actress for economic losses of 250,000 yuan or roughly $34,000. And sure, even if the Chinese civil code can protect foreign nationals such as English VAs, one can't help but wonder why would Hoyoverse even attempt to do something like that when they know that if they try to train AI with their Chinese VAs' voices without their consent, they would be in a lot of legal trouble. I had mentioned this before in one of my previous videos as well, that the voice actor culture is very different in the East, with one example being Japan, where voice actors are on the same level as idols over there. They are literally worshipped. Hoyoverse has worked with many very famous Japanese VAs, and as some people have stated, Japanese VAs bring new audiences to the games in which they voice, whereas English VAs get an audience from the exposure they get in the game they voice. And now, I'm not saying that English VAs are bad, not at all. There are so many incredibly talented individuals out there. But what I'm trying to say is that the voice acting scene in the West really can't compare to the one in the East, at least as of right now. So why would Hoyoverse, a company literally made by otakus, ruin their own reputation by using AI voices and replacing all of the famous VAs? I'm not trying to be a multi-billion company defender here, and I can't know what they plan to do in the future, but it's just something to think about. And just to mention this in case it gets brought up in the comments, there has been one instance of Hoyoverse using AI voices for their games, and that was for Tears of Themis. One of the voice actors was undergoing a police investigation, so they obtained the actor's consent to use an AI voice until the investigation concluded. The actor later was found guilty, however, but that was just one such special case, and Hoyoverse did obtain the VA's consent to do this. This entire time, I've been saying that I'd really love to hear a non-union VA's perspective on all of this, but perhaps most are afraid of speaking out as to not get blacklisted. As we have established, joining SAG is the only way to maintain a career, allegedly speaking. And if you speak ill of them, I imagine they wouldn't let you work on their projects as a non-union VA, and they'd probably reject you if you applied to join them. Allegedly, hypothetically, in Wuthering Waves. If there is a non-union VA out there that would like to share their experiences, I'd be more than happy to have a chat with them. And while I am just a tiny non-existent YouTuber, I'm saying it here for everyone to hear that I will guarantee their anonymity. So if anyone would like to talk, you can DM me on Twitter, on Discord, you can shoot me an email, whichever you prefer. There were some VAs that tried to explain the situation a little bit more to people and bring some more information to the table and some more clarity. And they were replying to some people's questions. I did ask some of them questions too. I asked Koidao about what would happen to non-union VAs and that the Taft-Hartley procedure overcomplicates things, but I didn't receive a reply. Laura Stahl also put out this thread. I also asked her a question whether this is all not SAG's fault, as they haven't been enforcing their global rule 1 and people have been breaking it and working on non-union projects, but I also didn't receive a question to that. I also asked the official SAG account, but yeah, I don't expect anyone there to reply to me about any of that, so there's that. I did get a reply from a non-union voice actor and voice director, Chris Dituri, over here on Twitter. They put out this thread as well, where they basically didn't really want to speak about the strike, the recast, and the companies involved or anything like that. They only wanted to address the massive amount of misinformation in a lot of the threads online and posts. And they also said that they are weighing what they're technically allowed to say as someone that currently works for a studio who has worked on these games. But yeah, they basically addressed the fact that people are spreading misinformation and that most people don't know about the voice acting industry and SAG and all of that involved, and that you shouldn't be flaming VAs or studios on Twitter as that pushes the solution further away. So I asked, is this not all essentially SAG's fault, as they allowed union talents to break their global rule 1 and work on non-union projects? And they kinda dodged my question. I mean, I understand you can't publicly diss SAG, because that would be detrimental to your career, I would assume. This is at least just my interpretation, but they said that it's not as simple as that, and that there's blame to go around everywhere, and the reason SAG got involved in the first place is that a lot of the clients won't sign any contracts that protect actors from AI. And once again, I tried to elaborate and say, yeah, I see what you mean, but what I'm trying to say is that union VAs were never even supposed to work on non-union projects like Genshin if they followed the rules, right? And that basically both the VAs and Hoyoverse are trapped in this situation thanks to SAG, and that China has AI laws and AI protections, and Hoyoverse works with studios that do offer AI protections like sound Cadence, And that shouldn't it be better for SAG just to negotiate an agreement that offers AI protections without demanding that Hoyo projects become union? And they just said that SAG can be involved if a project isn't union, basically. And further continuing that a lot of these companies don't want to sign these agreements because they don't want to close the door on AI, and that they just want a handshake agreement that they won't clone the voices right now. And then I added that it seems like SAG isn't too opposed to AI either, considering that they have made a deal with Ethelvox and other AI companies, and that the agreement doesn't seem to offer that many strict AI protections as they claim they are trying to achieve. And that's where our conversation ended. And regarding Sound Cadence, that is a studio working on ZZZ, and this is a studio owned. I think it's owned by Furina's voice actor. They made a statement here saying, "From top to bottom, Sound Cadence Studios is a community of artists as concerns have been raised regarding how we work with our voice actors. We want to take this opportunity to clarify where we stand and how we operate. Every contract at our studio features explicit AI protections regardless of union status. Much of our staff are actors themselves and could not in good conscience offer other performers work we would not be willing to take. The decision to recast talent on any project is not made lightly. While sometimes our hands are tied as to what we can communicate and when, we understand how personally actors can take their roles and always want to ensure that no one is ever blindsided. Our studio has and will continue to honor legacy casting on all projects we've inherited whenever possible, and always reach out to actors to reprise their roles before investigating any other opinions. We respect the decisions of all actors in navigating the ongoing strike and fully support SAG-AFTRA in its AI negotiations." Yeah, they're just mentioning the AI negotiations, as some people have pointed out. "The passion of fan communities for video game characters and the people who bring them to life is further evidence that real human actors matter, and we will continue to bring voices to our clients' projects in the most human way possible." So that's what they had to say, and that's the studio currently working on ZZZ. There was also a thread on Reddit that popped up made by a throwaway account that has now been deleted. If you do come across posts and threads like this, you do have to take them with a spoonful of salt, as anyone can technically write those and claim that they are a VA. So we'll never know the truth, but in the off chance that a real VA wrote this, they basically said that they are embarrassed by the VA's actions, the ones that bullied Jacob, that the influence of SAG makes it impossible to speak out under their real name, and that many non-union colleagues have expressed the same feelings and fear of long-term repercussions for their careers in any genre of voiceover, which included things outside of games or animation. And they continue to say, "Just know that for many of us non-union VAs, the behavior has convinced many of us to never join SAG because we don't want to ever be associated with this type of professionalism for our industry. Yes, it can hurt us by not joining if we want to join SAG, but maybe this is the start of opening the doors to another option besides SAG-AFTRA." And once again, this was all written by a throwaway account that is now deleted, so take all of this with a massive grain of salt. And a funny, unexpected thing of this entire situation that has come from all of this is that there are now users serving as the bridge between the English and Chinese community. The issue regarding the recast, bullying, and lack of English voiceover for months has now reached our Chinese bros, and they are mad by the looks of it. There have been multiple threads on Reddit of users translating Reddit comments and posting them on Bilibili, and then translating comments from Bilibili and posting them back to Reddit. So here's what some of the Chinese fans had to say about this. A lot of them pointed out how a lot of these VAs are acting like they own the characters, when in reality that's not true. The company owes them. They get too attached to them is what they are saying. That they're viewing the characters as their own, and that it's ridiculous to say that it's your character. Some Chinese fans also mentioned that they are surprised how long this has been going on for, and that even though they have the dramas on the Chinese side of things too, at least they have a complete gaming experience and everyone is voiced, and the English dub has been missing for so long now, and they're saying that they would have started complaining way earlier than we did. Some of them have harsher comments and are saying that they want some of the VAs to be recast and replaced. And this whole section here about the Chinese labor union laws came from one of these Reddit threads, and it was allegedly written by one of the Chinese users, but as it states here, it was written using DeepSeek. And if you try to use something similar like ChatGPT and ask it, "Hey, can Chinese companies do this legally?" it's gonna give you different answers based on what you ask. Sometimes it's gonna say, yeah, they can't do this, or sometimes it's gonna say there is no law that outright forbids that. That's why it's important to go through these articles and see whether that's true or not, but We do need someone that specializes in Chinese law to confirm or deny any of that. But yeah, this has led to the English and Chinese communities bonding over this drama. And some are saying how it's like throwing paper notes to each other over the wall. And what in the reaction Samsara is this, so everyone has been having a lot of fun with this. And as you can see, that's one of the users here that has been exporting comments from Reddit onto Bilibili, and they have made quite a few videos on this situation. A lot of the videos have tens of thousands of views, some even reaching over 100,000. This initial one talking about the drama, and then everyone's reactions to SAG-AFTRA's chief negotiator's comments about non-union VAs, some of their reactions to Paimon's voice actor and them crashing out, and many others. So these videos have been gaining quite a bit of attention over there. Yeah, we all know that when the Chinese community gets upset, they make sure that their voices get heard, and now they are upset on our behalf. So we'll see what comes from all of this. I'm gonna conclude all of this by saying that I don't think anyone wants for any of the voice actors to lose their jobs. There are some people out there with extreme views like this, but the majority of players do want the best for voice actors, but they also want more clarity on the situation. And one thing I don't understand is how do none of these VAs who attacked Jacob not realize that all people want is for them to apologize? I have yet to see a single person apologize. They've only continued to double and triple down and crash out more and more. And sure, you may not be happy that John got recast. It's truly a sad situation, and I feel terrible for him. You may not be happy that Jacob took the role, but he sure as hell didn't deserve all of this harassment coming from his fellow castmates. But yeah, that's about it. This took a while to compile. I hope I covered most of the basics and people's concerns. If you do have any questions, do leave them down below, and I guess I'll try to make a follow-up updated video. But I guess that's gonna be all for now. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the support on the previous 2 videos. I didn't expect them to reach so many of you. Hopefully this whole situation can be resolved soon. We all want the voice actors to have AI protections, we want them to get back to work, and we want to hear the characters in game voice again. So hopefully a solution can be made soon. But as you can see, the situation is way more complex than we all initially thought. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Have fun, take care, keep smiling, lots of love, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!